Hi, my name is Aaron McManus, and you are listening to the Battle Ready podcast. This week, we have something really special. We decided to kind of dig into the archives. When we first decided to start shooting Battle Ready podcast in 2020, we were actually in Stockholm, Sweden. We were heading on a trip, me and my dad, and we were doing like a little Scandinavian tour through Sweden and Denmark. We were also in London and the UK and a little bit of Europe and Amsterdam. And we filmed a few of these episodes. So these are not in studio. So a little bit of the audio is messy. You hear the city. In this episode, we are actually in the car driving. One of our friends is driving us, Petrus. He is on team at Hillsong in Stockholm, Sweden, and he is incredible. So shout out to that amazing man. And you'll hear his voice a little bit kind of correct us on how we pronunciate some of the Swedish things. But basically, we're in the car, we're talking, and we just wanted to make the most of the trip. We get this opportunity to travel a lot, but when you go to Europe in the dead of winter, it gets really cold. The days are short, so we decided, if we're gonna go, we're gonna bring our good friend Austin along. And maybe we could film some of these things. So we're in the car, we're filming, and we talk about environments. We talk about the atmosphere. We talk about what it feels like when you step into rooms and how important that is. This is a very church-focused episode. But, if you're not in the church space, if you're just, in the mainstream business space, or maybe you're in college, or maybe you are, a part of a workout group or XYZ, this I think applies to every single person, because it does not matter if you work for a church or work for a business or you're a business owner. We all do all things. And this one's really specific to just how to create great environments, how to create an atmosphere that is inviting for people. I talk a little bit about my past and where I came from, and my dad kind of breaks down the environments that we walked through in Europe, and it was a really special episode. It's short, it's 20 minutes, and I hope you enjoy it. So subscribe to the Battle Ready podcast, and you can leave a review on iTunes, on the podcast section. You can rate us, and you can give us a review. Talk soon. So we're here in Stockholm, Sweden, and we haven't done a Battle Ready in a while, so we wanted to do one while we're on the road. We've got our guy, Petrus, in the front, part of the team here at Hillsong.
What a great place to do a Battle Ready. I mean, I know the Norwegians claim being the only Vikings, but Sweden is also the home front of the Vikings and the pioneers, explorers, adventurers that discovered.
Apparently they discovered the U.S.,
yeah,
but it doesn't count if you don't stay.
Yeah, it's because, I know that. The Vikings were more and more humble, so they didn't feel like they needed to put their name on everything. But one of the things, Aaron, that you were mentioning yesterday was about environments and how do you create environments and how do you influence environments where people can have healthier lives and where there's momentum and creativity and life change. And one of the things that really struck me is we're here in Sweden, and it is what time? 11:30?
Yeah, 11:30.
And it looks like it's 8 p.m. and there's just no light here.
There's no sun.
And so there really was no sunrise, and there'll be no sunset. And I can imagine being in an environment every day where there's no sunlight can be a little bit depressing, can feel a little heavy. But when you walk into buildings here, Aaron, the lighting is beautiful.
Yeah, it feels like every space inside of a building or a restaurant or a church feels so thought out and such a intention behind the atmosphere and the environment.
Even outside, because there's so much darkness in the winter months, there's a real careful attention to the lights. And it's not just these giant LED or fluorescent lights. It's almost like very carefully placed smaller lights to create an environment, create an ambiance. And I wonder how many times we think that like the right lighting is just one bright light, and rather than creating the ambiance of environment and feel and warmth and that's one of the things that I know is really important to you. You come.
I'm so OCD that you know this, because I'll come over your house and I'll walk in the room and start adjusting all the dimmers of the lights.
Or you start turning off all the big lights.
I start turning off all the big lights. I don't like overhead light. I only like side light. Like, I'm so weirdly OCD about the kind of light that I walk into. And even, we'll go to basketball games or, soccer or football games, and I can't do like arena lighting. It stresses it actually like evokes like an emotion and like in a mental state, and it's such an interesting concept.
But let's just maybe turn it a little bit in talking about how to if we saw human community and human relationships as the nuance of lighting? How would we begin to deal with environments?
Yeah, I think I think the conversation came up when we were at the Hillsong Stockholm offices, and we were in this room, and it wasn't a big room, and there wasn't much in the room, but there was this long, beautiful table, and it just immediately evoked like community. There was music in the background, the lighting was nice, and it was this one room, and we were laughing, being like, how often do we design things in LA, and we think we're so innovative and cool sometimes, and we think we have one of the best creative teams in the world, but we'll just miss the details in the room. And we're in a culture where those little details matter so much, because it evoking warmth and family and community is so important to them and to so many people here, that the room you walk into really does matter. If you're gonna, it's so cold and so icy outside at times. When you walk into a room, it's gotta feel warm, it's gotta feel aesthetically beautiful and inspiring, and I don't even know if they think, we're probably thinking about it more than they think about it.
Yeah, because
they're just naturally cool.
Yeah, what I was thinking was that the contrast creates the environment for creativity. Like absence demands creativity. And so because you have the absence of light, you begin to have an accelerated or increased level of creativity in the study of light, in the use of light. And it's the same way with, let's say, community. If you are part of, let's say, a church, and your friends are there and your family's there and you've been there all your life, you forget what it's like to live without community. You forget what it's like to be an outsider that's not connecting. And so you're not paying attention to how you're supposed to be organizing the environment to create warmth and invitation. And I mean, maybe that's why sometimes a person who grew up outside of church is so oftentimes more aware of the environment that needs to be created to create hospitality and warmth and acceptance for the person who's coming for the first time.
Yeah, I think even like growing up in church, Dad, we were talking about how, because we were both like obsessed with spaces and environments and atmospheres, and when you do church, when I say when you do church, like when you're part of the team that puts on church for other people, it becomes something that's second nature. It's something that you're always taking notes on. You're always taking photos of details, and you're always improving the space. But when you bring friends in who genuinely have never been inside of church, the spaces that they go inside that are communal are such a different environment than a space like church, where you walk into Mosaic or you walk into Hillsong Stockholm, there's a buzz from the moment you walk in. There's a warmth, there's like an environmental like infusion of energy, where people are alive and communicating and talking to each other, and there's like a genuine like seeking of how are you and how are you doing and what is going on in your life that I don't think most people have ever experienced. And I know that when I've brought friends, they are so surprised at how electric it can be inside of a church, where you would really only get those spaces like in a club or in a really crowded restaurant, or you go to places like the Grove or Times Square in New York, and it's why people, and we talk about this, like we're so anti-tourists. We would rather drink great coffee, read great books and have great conversations with people. Like people make the city, but so many people in the world are tourists.
Yeah.
And I laugh because like I'm 31, and the older I get, the more dad moments I have. And I'm not a dad, but like I just pull my phone out and I'm like, I'm gonna have a tourist moment, just take a photo of this because I think it's cool. And to do what? Like look at it alone later. But I feel like there's so many people in the world, they base like their entire vacation or work life around going and seeing these places that all of these other people are drawn to. Like we have these wonders of the world, and we create monuments in order to build community, right?
I think one of the things that really struck me is that, well, you talked about nightclubs, people going to clubs or places like that there's a difference between almost like friendship and fakeness. And like you maybe have fake ship, where people...
Fake ship?
Yeah, where people act like they care about you, and they act like they're friendly, they act like they're...
Fake ship, our new band.
Yeah, inviting you into their world. But because I've walked into places where people are almost like overkill on the friendliness, but doesn't feel authentic. it feels like fluorescent lights, and, where it's just too much.
But you can't stop looking at it.
Yeah, but it's also a little blinding and disturbing, and I think that this is the difference in an environment. I think is that when you actually do care about people, the lighting is right. When you express genuine concern and interest in people, and you take a moment and you do more than say hello, but maybe you get to know a person, or it's the difference between when someone comes for the first time to Mosaic and you see they have 3 kids, and you say, hey, the children's area's over there, or saying, hi, I see you have kids. You get to you kneel down, you ask the kids their names, you go, let me walk you over to your classrooms. Yeah, because it changes the environment. It goes from fluorescent lighting to environmental lighting.
So so true, right? Like it becomes more about invoking a feeling than requiring a function out of people. You know?
Yeah, I just remember early on we were trying to you're trying to coach people and being friendly and creating a welcoming environment. And I would come, and our volunteers would be lined up in a single file.
It looked like the firing squad.
Yeah. We're shaking people's hands, saying, it's good to have you, good to have you. I'm going, hey guys, this feels as inauthentic and disturbing as humanly possible.
It is so important who the first people are when you walk into a space that you meet. And I remember there was a guy in New York when I first kind of started walking back into church, and I think he was the head of a marketing agency. He was probably mid-30s, and I cannot remember his name for the life of me, but I've never forgotten his face. And I remember asking him, what do you do? And he's like, well, all I do is I stand at the door and I shake every person's hand when they walk in. And I remember this kind of paradox that was created in my brain. It was such a shift. I was like, oh, you go to a club, or you go to a restaurant, or you go to wherever, and the host, what does it say when you walk into a restaurant? Wait for the host so they can seat you. And then you go to this church, and there's this guy who's hurrying you in, going, come in, come in, come in. This is my home, this is my home, this is my home. Good to meet you, good to meet you, good to meet you. And he was there every week that I was at this church. And I just remember him such a simple function, such a simple task left such a long-lasting effect on me that this person would be so committed to just saying hello to people every Sunday. And I think we talk this, Dad, we have, where we've failed at times with welcome teams or we have amazing volunteers, but sometimes they haven't been around church for too long. But then you get to this place where our best teams are the parking teams. We have the nuttiest people who are so energetic and so fun, and so many times our friends' dad will be like, well, the guy at the parking guy, he was incredible, helped me with my kids, helped me out of my car with my bags, and I'm like, well, it's just funny that the little things that actually change the way people perceive church.
Well, it's not just even church, because there are certain places we won't go shopping because the parking is so bad.
Or the people are mean.
Yeah. Or restaurants where you love the restaurant, but you're like, it's just impossible to get a place to park, and the people are... Have you ever been in a restaurant where you feel like you've offended the waiter by being there? I've been places where I almost felt apologetic that I was making someone listen to me as I'm ordering food.
Yeah.
And it is amazing how the food tastes better when the people serving you are kind and friendly. And I think of this as a person who is communicating almost every week, that when people have stepped into the environment of Mosaic and they've been received with love and acceptance and kindness and authenticity, 90% of the message has already been communicated.
Yeah.
And I've been made a better speaker because of what they've done. And the opposite can be true too, right? The reverse, where when a person comes in and it's cold and uncaring and unwelcoming, and it's not that people aren't doing anything wrong, they're just not doing anything right.
I mean, we've had weeks that we talk about it. We're like, you were less about this because you are one of like the best communicators and you don't blame other people, but I blame other people, and because I'm not quite there in my communication ability. But it sucks when you know that the team around you has just had a bad week. Like, you know, welcome team was small, or like it was raining outside, and so getting parked and getting inside was tough, and then maybe worship had moments where it wasn't strong, you know, and because even though we have, I think, one of the best worship teams in the world, like not every week is perfect. You're building new people, you're taking chances. There's people who mess up, and there's moments, or maybe there's moments where people just show up and they're just not there, spiritually or emotionally
They've
connected.
had a hard week, but they still are being faithful and are up there.
And there's moments, and we talk about it. We're like, our job as like the team that is the team before you get up on platform stage and speak is we have to break down as many walls as possible. By the time that you get up there, they're already feeling at home. They already decided they're going to come back because this has been a great experience.
Yeah, so a huge part of, I think, of the dynamic of environments is that the environment can actually cause you to start in the deficit before you even said your first word. And or the environment can actually set you up for a win, because it's also the flip side. Some days your message just isn't that good. You know.
But the environment was great.
Yeah, I mean, I look, you know, I just been speaking here in Stockholm, and the environment's so great. And on Sunday night, I did not feel that extraordinary, you know, like I did that extraordinary on the nighttime. But people are probably going to remember a great experience because the environment was so great. And it's always nice to know you're kind of surfing on a really big wave.
Yeah.
And even if you're not a good surfer, you're going to get carried anyway.
They gave me the chance to speak in the second biggest city in
What's it
Sweden.
called?
Gothenburg. Gothenburg. But how do you really say it? It's Utenburg?
Pronounce it Göteborg.
Uteborg.
Göteborg, of course.
Göteborg. Göteborg. Yo boy. And I got to speak there, and you know, you speak at a great Hillsong campus. You're already surfing on a big wave. If you can just stand up and not mess it up, and you have stepped into a culture that has built a strong worship, strong leadership, strong hosting, strong culture, and then you come in and you already feel like you've been set up for a success. And I would say, as like someone who's young and still on that journey of figuring out how to communicate, getting to preach anywhere that is a Hillsong is an honor. But two, you realize that like, this is what you should set your guests up for. This is the feeling of like you've been handed a win even before you've gotten up. And even the people, like the campus pastor Richard was just hey, go for it, go have fun. And that was it. And I don't know if it was like his weird Swedish way of encouragement, but I felt so encouraged of, hey, there's no way you're gonna mess this up. You're just gonna be you and do your thing and talk to people about Jesus. And I felt like I got brought into an atmosphere of a win. And I think sometimes we go into Sundays, or we go into life, we go into work, we go into businesses, we go into meetings, and we let the environment affect us too much. That's something you've talked to me about so many times, that you're like, you're not doing well speaking because you're letting everything else affect you. And I remember, I've been talking for a long time, but we're going on a drive, so it's good. I remember there was a moment in Orange County, in our campus, and it's new and it's growing, and people, and it's a lot of families, like young families, and there was this baby that was just going off, like not even, it was like it hated me. The child, this newly born child hated me. And in the past, it was something that would have like really messed me up, and it did mess me up. It was so loud. You had to like acknowledge the fact that this child, there was something going wrong. And I didn't know whose baby it was. I didn't even know who it was, but it was so loud. I just looked and I said, hey, don't leave. That baby couldn't possibly make me worse. And the whole room laughed, and it was like a funny moment. And I said, just hang in the aisle if you want to walk your baby. And I asked them, what's the baby's name? And they gave me the baby's name, and everyone in the room cheered, and we're like, we love babies. And you have taught me how do you turn the environment for a win?
Yeah.
Versus how do you let the environment rule you? And I think so many times in life, we let the environment rule us.
Yeah.
And the smallest little factor that is a non-factor just takes over the moment.
And I think that's the summary statement, whether it's in an environment like church or in your business or in your family, your home, your relationships, is leadership is about creating the environment. And if you're being shaped by the environment, you're not leading. If you're shaping the environment, then you're leading. And then when you're creating environments where other people are made better, that's when you're leading at an optimal level. And because I think the goal for us is, obviously you want to have a great environment where people are at their best who are in the public arena, whether they're singing or speaking or doing something public. But what you really want is you want an environment where every single person in that space leaves stronger and more courageous and with a deeper resolve to live the life they're created to live. And you want to create an environment where everyone is elevated. And that to me is the goal of leadership. And I think early on when you're trying to find your leadership muscles, you need the environment to carry you.
So true.
But as you develop your leadership muscles, you should be able to step into any environment and begin to carry it.
Yeah. And you were so pivotal in that. I remember when Mosaic is a fairly young church if you think about the lifespan of a church. And we were in Hollywood and you were introducing new voices and something that you really care about. You usually take the summers and you kind of introduce over like 6 to 8 weeks, and you actually created a midweek, and you only spoke it twice, I think.
I spoke the first one just to get people there, and then after that we had other people speaking that no one knew.
Yeah, that no one knew, and I remember you would go up and you would introduce, they weren't speaking because you weren't there, you were there, and which was a horrible experience if you're not a good speaker, because speaking in front of you is so terrifying, just from personal experience. And you would go up and you would give this introduction, and it was kind of this forward to the book of this person's life. And I remember the room would change because you would alter the environment of, we're going to lean in, we're going to be a culture of learning from anyone. And I think as like young people, sometimes we show up to things going, I deserve a great meal. Because, and then we look at it going like, if the parking sucked or if, there was the whatever, like the bathroom wasn't clean, which we are so specific about bathrooms, we try to make them as clean as possible. The environment. But if the environment has one flaw, we tend to go, or the message wasn't what we needed in the moment, we tend to go, well, the meal wasn't worth it. I didn't leave full. But when you talk about are you a part of actually developing the environment, which I think you do so well, you show up going I show up because I'm actually bringing something to this space that is infectious to the rest of the room.
I felt like one of the most important things when we had all those new voices, those fresh voices, was after they were done, I would get up and share something I'd learned.
Yeah, you would fix the message.
And I would, I wanted people to go, we just had a special experience here. And if they trust my voice, I wanted them to know, hey, I just received something. I just learned something. This was really special for me. And what it does is it shifts the person who's like, oh, that wasn't that great, or that person's critiquing rather than growing. And it shifts them in that moment, as well.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Battle Ready podcast. I think the conversation that we had on environments and atmosphere was really important. I think the idea at the end that I was kind of ranting on, and thank you for sticking with us if you made it to the end. I was out of practice and we're figuring this thing back out, and I feel so much more comfortable doing this podcast and even just being in front of the camera 8 months later. But we talked about showing up and being dissatisfied with the meal, being dissatisfied with the environment around us. And I think so often, whether you're young or you're old, we rely on everyone else to create the environment in our lives. And something that I've realized now looking back over these 8 months, being in the US, being in my city, being in my apartment, being in quarantine, that so much of the environment is on me. What will I bring to the space? How will I fill the space? Will I be insecure in my space? Will I be uncomfortable in my space? Will I be terrified in my space? And 8 months later, the conversation I think still stands, and I hope this is a topic we're able to come back to, me and my dad, when he's here with us, doing it in studio in this new season. But either way, whatever environment you are a part of, I hope that you know that you have the power to bring a change to that environment. Thank you for listening. I hope you can write a review on iTunes for this podcast, Battery Ready Podcast, and I will see you in a few days for the next episode.